Welcome back, everyone, to the Late Night Review. And tonight I want to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. This is a classic. This is a great horror movie. It's one of the greatest horror movies of all time, in my opinion. Fantasy horror. It's got great special effects, especially for the time. And the story is interesting. You have these troubled teens in this mental hospital who are suicidal. Some of them are suicidal. They all have different problems. They've gone through a lot. And they're the last of the Elm Street children, as Heather Langenkamp's character, Nancy Thompson, told them in the group meeting. And I'm so glad she came back for this. I've always really loved Heather Langenkamp. I always thought she did a great job in Nightmare 1. And then, of course, this one, Part 3, and then Part 7, The New Nightmare, which is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. She's done a lot of work. She played Nancy Kerrigan in the true story about Nancy Kerrigan, and also in Fugitive Mind with Michael Dudikoff. Michael Dudikoff, I really like him because of the American Ninja and Platoon Leader. Not Platoon, but Platoon Leader. Platoon was really a drama, fantastic movie. Platoon Leader was not very, very well known, but I always liked that movie, Platoon Leader. And Michael Dudikoff has always been somebody that I really appreciated. And Heather Langenkamp has always done a great job in everything I've seen her in. Glad she's back here. John Saxon's back. I first saw him in Enter the Dragon as a kid, and he's been in westerns. He's been in multiple movies. Of course, Nightmare 1. Who can forget that? Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, and Robert Englund. No one does Freddy Krueger like Robert Englund. He does such a great job. Robert Englund is one of my favorites of all time. Maybe in the future, I'll do a ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I'm thinking about that. That might be a good idea. I think Robert Englund is he's like a modern day Lon Chaney Jr., Lon Chaney Sr., basically Lon Chaney Sr., I would say, because of all the different characters he played. And then Boris Karloff, modern day Boris Karloff, playing Freddy Krueger, coming back, just like Boris Karloff played Frankenstein. Robert Englund played Freddy Krueger. And then also Vincent Price. Vincent Price and Robert Englund kind of, especially as Robert Englund has gotten older, he's playing these different roles, almost like a Vincent Price type character, something that roles that Vincent Price would probably do if he were given the and he did roles like that. If he were alive today, he would probably do similar roles as to what Robert Englund's done in his later years. They kind of remind me of each other. Robert Englund is just a legend of horror. He's back here in Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is a cemented classic, I think. As a kid, it was my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I've always really liked the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I think it's a great mixture of fantasy, horror, and what storytelling originally created by Wes Craven. The character of Freddy Krueger, he had that experience. If you watch interviews with Wes Craven, he had that experience as a kid where he saw someone walking home. He was way up and I think it was in Ohio where he grew up, if I remember right, if it's Ohio, but he saw a creepy looking guy going home, and he was kind of far away in a window, kind of looking down. It was like really late at night, and the guy was kind of dressed like Freddy, and the guy looked back and saw Wes Craven, and then Wes Craven looked away from the window. He waited like a minute or something, and he was hoping that the guy left. And he counted, I think, and then he looked out, and the guy was closer, and the guy decided to scare this little kid, and that's what inspired him to create Freddy. And I think Wes Craven got his older brother. If I remember, I hope I'm not messing the story up. I've seen this in an interview with Craven years ago, and he said that I think his older brother got a baseball bat or something. They had a lobby at their apartment, and he thought he heard the door open to the lobby, and the guy was getting closer, and he was scared as a little kid, and his brother came out, and then the guy eventually left. They didn't see him anymore, but it's on YouTube. I think Mick Garris interviewed Wes Craven, and Wes Craven talks about it there in an interview on YouTube, and it was really good. I seen it years ago, and I hope my memory's serving me correctly today or tonight. A late night review. But this movie is one of my all-time favorites, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. The first one was directed by Wes Craven, of course, and then the seventh one, The New Nightmare, was directed by Wes Craven. Over time, and then part 4, when that came out when I was a kid, that was my new favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie. When part 5 came out, I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite. I always kind of liked part 5, but 3 and 4 were my favorites. And then part 4 became my favorite as a kid after it came out. So I kind of went back and forth. But nowadays, I think part 1 and then The New Nightmare, Wes Craven came back to direct The New Nightmare. I think those are my 2 favorites. Part 1 and then Wes Craven's New Nightmare. But I still really like part 3. It's a classic, one of the all-time greats. And Freddy Krueger, the character, I really like how he's portrayed in the early films. I didn't like the remake. Usually on my channel here, I'll talk about movies that I like and movies I have nostalgia for, but I will mention movies I don't like, especially if they're in a franchise that I like. I wish the remake would have never been made. I think the cast was fine, but I think I heard Robert Englund in an interview say once that there was a good cast and he kind of complimented the film, but the kids were all tainted from the very beginning. If you watch the movie, there's already like a gray cloud over the kids. Everything's already kind of down. And he said, you got to meet them first. You got to kind of be introduced to them first and then go through it. But they were kind of tainted from the beginning. In other words, they were already down and in bad shape, and you could see it. They were depressed about these nightmares. So it starts off on a really kind of dreary, negative note. They tried, but one thing I really, and these are my words, one thing I really, really don't like about the remake is they focused on the pedophilia angle, and I hated that. I really didn't like that because the way I always looked at the franchise and Freddy Krueger was not that. And when I was a kid, I didn't even know about that. When I was younger, I didn't even think about that. I just thought he was a creepy killer. It's like a fairy tale. But the thing I like about the original films is they focused on this dark character who scared you in the dreams. And if you died in the dreams, you'd die in real life. He was almost like the troll under the bridge, the troll that can get you in a Grimm's fairy tale. But they took it from that to something sick in the remake, and I did not like that at all. When I think about that or see that, I just want Charles Bronson or Clint Eastwood to come and blow him away with a nightmare gun, a special gun. In the dream, it becomes a special weapon. You can make anything you want in a dream. The gun becomes a Freddy killer or whatever in the remake. I didn't like it. I tried watching it 3 times, actually, the remake. I had it on DVD. First time I didn't like it, second time I didn't like it, and the third time I think I turned it off before it was over. I tried it, because I'm a fan of the franchise, so I tried to give it a shot, but it didn't work. Part 3 is one of my all-time favorites. It's got a good cast, and it's well done. The kids are interesting. I really like how they have their powers in the dream. The Wizard Master, the Wizard Master character, I have to say this, I think he should have been fleshed out more. I am the Wizard Master, and that was cool with the green lightning coming out. I wish that would have been explored more. I wish that had been not only fleshed out, but I wish he would have gotten more shots against Freddy, because it seems like to me, if he's the Wizard Master, he should have lasted longer. And if he had that green lightning coming out, it should have done more. And they could have killed him off later or had him survive. But I like that whole concept, and maybe he could have come back. The Wizard Master coming back in sequels. I really like that. And I think that should have been explored, but it wasn't. But this is a great movie. I like the cinematography, the directing. I like everything about it pretty much. And it slipped over time for me for some reason, because I think I have a lot of nostalgia for the first one and this one, but especially the first one. I have to say the first one's still my favorite, and one of the big reasons is, first of all, I do like the hospital idea in this one. It's creepy, and it's creepy in a lot of movies. Exorcist 3, it was utilized really well, so I think it works. And this is really, really good for this movie. But I like the original neighborhood. It's almost like with Halloween, the first one. I love that neighborhood, the trees and the mist at night and also Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, the mist at night when Heather Langenkamp's character, Nancy Thompson, is looking for Freddy and she's walking in the dream. I love that. The trees and the mist, the dark trees, the way the photography is, and the music is perfect. And so much nostalgia for it. It actually inspired a little bit. It inspired some of my art, and the trees at night, the music. Thought it was beautiful. Actually, it's a horror movie, but there was beautiful scenes. I love the original house and the neighborhood. So I do love part 3 and part 1, but the thing that puts part 1 above it for me personally is that original neighborhood. It was fresh. No one was really prepared for it, and Wes Craven directed it, so he's got his atmosphere, and I love the atmosphere that he brings to his films. Uh, the whole cast is young; they're there. It's brand new. Robert Englund's first time as Freddy Krueger, and I have a ton of nostalgia for that first one. I saw it as a double feature when I was a kid. It's 1984, I believe, and I was about 7 years old, taken to the theater, and I saw a double feature. The first movie was Nightmare on Elm Street. It was dark. That came on. The Late Late Show was The Evil Dead with Bruce Campbell. I got a ton of nostalgia for those, and both New Line Cinema. I love that black and red at the beginning, flashing for New Line Cinema at the beginning. I love that old logo. I really do. That's been inspirational to me. It sounds strange. It's a little snippet. It's a small part of the whole process, but it left an impression on me. Really like that first one, still the best, but part 3 is not only a worthy addition to the franchise, it's a great sequel, and I think in history, the history of horror, it's one of the greatest sequels of all time of any franchise. It deserves a lot of credit. It's one of my favorites. And the makeup was done really, really well. You have all these different sequels to Nightmare on Elm Street, and it seems to me one of the things that even the later sequels did really well was Freddy's makeup. I always admired the makeup job that they did, even though Robert Englund was under torture sitting there for so long, putting all that stuff on him. There's interviews with him all over YouTube that I'd seen a long time ago, and they're fantastic. He talks about it. But yeah, this is a movie that I do have nostalgia for also. It's really well done. It's a good story, and I highly recommend it. And one more thing before I go is Freddy Krueger, the character of Freddy Krueger is really a legend in the horror franchise of all time, one of the greatest characters ever created of all time. Thank you, Wes Craven. And it's almost, there's an archetype to Freddy. You got the hat, the creepy hat. Whether it's a witch or a hat man or some creepy character walking home at night with this strange hat and a little kid sees him through a window like with Wes Craven, there's an archetype there. The witch with the pointy nose and Freddy's face, how it looks. There's an archetype about the character of Freddy Krueger that really, I think, touches a lot of people in a scary way, and it kind of awakens their senses when you watch this movie and the Nightmare on Elm Street series in particular. And I've said this before in another review of one of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. The Wizard of Oz, it is really, to me, and I don't know if anyone else feels this way, Wizard of Oz is a classic. I love that movie. It's an old movie, very, very well done. But the Scarecrow and the witch in there, and Freddy Krueger, the way he looks in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, kind of remind me of each other. And I don't know if it goes back to that old archetype that a lot of us have in us or that know about it consciously or subconsciously, but there's something there. And maybe that can be explored in some weird way. But I think maybe that's one of the reasons they had Freddy on a broomstick in Freddy's Dead. I know a lot of people don't like that movie. I do. I actually do. And one of the reasons is, and it's almost like blasphemy, but I actually like it better than part 5. But I saw that when he was on the broom. It kind of got to me because I was thinking that a long, long time ago, and I think a lot of people were too, but they didn't. Maybe they didn't want to do it or explore it. But it was kind of a funny part in that movie, and the house was way up in the air, and I do appreciate that movie actually, and I do kind of like it because it's fun. And that movie contains Robert Englund's personal favorite kill, which is the hearing aid kill. I heard him say that on an interview. And I like the first one much better than that one. But I do think there's an archetype. And I do think with the nose and the hat and the face and the voice, there's something. Maybe there was a scary character in ancient times that it kind of draws back to, and we all subconsciously remember it. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, back to the topic, is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Fantasy horror. It's just a great character in the sense that, you know, he's evil, he's horrible, not good, he's evil, but he's an interesting character. Freddy Krueger is a very interesting character. He speaks, he's got such a personality, which a lot of the characters, and especially in the past, the monsters and the Universal monsters never really did, except for Dracula. So he's got that personality, and Robert Englund sure brought him to life and always did every time he played him. A horror legend. So yes, if you like horror, I highly recommend Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. It's a really good horror movie. This has been the Late Night Review. Like and subscribe and share this video and tell people about the channel, please. And good night, everybody, and sweet dreams.